Grocery shopping can be a tedious but too enjoyable task. The stability of providing fresh goods and a variety of choices is a huge logistical undertaking for supermarkets. As consumers, part of what makes our grocery shopping experience pleasant is our expectations that our local store can keep up with the demands of the global supply chain. This process isn't entirely mechanical. Both seen and unseen are the hard workers making ethical decisions in the interest of the business. As such, your experience, my experience, our experience is not just about choice and quality of product, but the choice and quality of the staff making sound decisions to provide these services. To provide outstanding service, employers must hire employees that agree to a set of moral principles to ensure the success of the business and each other. To help understand the complexities of ethical decision-making and applying moral principles in business, I invited Brett Ressler, a regional manager of an international grocery chain, to the studio to discuss his ethical decision-making and the intended impact to his staff, consumers, and organization. Brett, I want to thank you so much for coming this evening. It is an honor to be able to have the opportunity to interview you. You have seemed to have had a significant number of jobs ever since you were a kid, growing up, working a newspaper route, working at a pizza shop, working at a glass store. You're not even from California. You migrated to California where you went into several other industries. You're a USC graduate. You were in the military. You were in the banking institutions, you worked at a glass store. There is just a wide variety of places that you've been, things you've seen, including even the aerospace industry. Mm-hmm. So tell us about yourself.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I am from Iowa originally. Grew up there, born and raised, and started off with a paper route, like you said, I think I was maybe 12 years old, delivering papers once a week for a company called the Consumer News, and just sometimes delivering papers, trying to figure out how to get through knee-deep snow and minus 20-degree weather just to deliver these routes with a giant bag and a bunch of papers that I could barely hold up. I was kind of a smaller kid growing up, and but that taught me the value of hard work. When I was done with that, I started at a pizza company, like you said. I was 13 years old. They paid me under the counter because I wasn't old enough yet to work in California or in Iowa. You can't work there till you're 14, so they paid me under the counter. That company was actually bought out. Got my next position where I worked at a company called Taco Tico for about the next 4 years until I graduated high school and joined the military. I was in the military for 4 years, got out, went to Charlotte, North Carolina, and worked with a glass and shower door company making custom frameless shower doors. Got to meet a lot of different people, and moved to California after that to go to USC while I was had to turn my life around a little bit, if you will, and not necessarily my life. My life at that point had been turned around, but I had to turn my academic career around. It was not great in high school. Growing up, I didn't see the value in it at the time, but through all my experiences, I did after that point. So while I was doing that, I worked at Wells Fargo as a banker, so I could at least have a fighting chance to afford USC, and I did. They were very generous with financial aid, which really helped me out, and kind of really showed me the value of helping other people in need at that point. While I was at USC, I worked for Boeing for a while in defense, space, and security until I graduated USC, and I started with the retail company I'm with now. I've been there ever since.
Absolutely phenomenal. And so now you're working at what is considered probably one of the world's largest retail grocery stores, and currently a regional manager for several different facilities or locations. Tell us more about the job that you do currently with that grocery retail store.
Yep, I have stores in Los Angeles and Orange County. Oversee all those locations, kind of the financials. We run the operations, and I had the opportunity to work with some really amazing people, really amazing leaders, and we can make adjustments. It's very new to California still, and so it's just a very dynamic place to work right now, and being able to make changes and seeing how it affects my employees' lives and the community's lives. It's really a great place to work.
Awesome. So, the main part of this conversation that we're having today is about ethical decision making. You mentioned that you service or you're responsible for areas of, Los Angeles and Orange County. And when I think about that as a California native myself, I think about how diverse California is as a whole, but also recognizing that in those two counties alone, there's a lot of differences with social issues that occur, and different economic statuses that people have. The differences between someone, let's say, who is a employee or even a customer in the North Orange County region versus someone who is a employee or customer that is in the in South Los Angeles region. How do you deal with the different aspects of personalities, different beliefs and values that your employees within those different areas may have? How do you balance that amongst all of the employees?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and in Southern California especially, it's almost the ultimate melting pot. Everybody kind of comes together. You can be in one area in Los Angeles and drive 15 minutes, and you've just completely changed demographics, socioeconomic demographics, completely different cultures, and you drove for 15 minutes or less. And I've always felt like if I'm truly trying to do what's right for each employee, regardless of their background or regardless of their culture, or just take everything out, when I truly try to do what's right for the employee, that you will be able to lead them successfully, and you'll be able to lead an organization successfully. And when I say do what's right for that employee, it's sometimes what's right for that employee is not necessarily what's right for the employee at a location, again, 15 minutes away, because of those experiences and because of their background. It may be a different set of needs, what the customer needs or the employee needs, but you have to truly try to do what's right for them, and really, care about each individual employee regardless of where they're from. And I think you will be successful as a leader, and a company will be successful when you truly try to take that approach to every employee.
You have a certain way in which you view ethics, right? And your ideal of how you see what is considered, right and what's considered wrong. Mm-hmm. Are there any times in the organization where you've had to actually implement those ethical values? Let's say, for example, an employee who you hired and you thought they were a good fit, but they may have made a decision that was not in line with maybe your ethical values or maybe the organization's ethical values, and you had to make a very difficult decision. Has there ever been a time that that's actually occurred?
Yeah, absolutely. When, especially in retail industry, you're kind of around a lot of things that are a lot of different situations, and really anytime dealing with cash or dealing with product that people want, it can be tempting to people who have access to that. And I don't necessarily think I've ever hired a bad person, and I don't think there's any bad people that work for my company. The problem is when you have good people that are in a situation to make a bad decision. And that's when times can get very challenging, especially when you really like somebody and they're a really good person, and maybe they're in a really challenging situation. Years ago, I had an employee who, just made a bad decision. They were a fantastic employee. I don't think they were immorally a bad person. And they were just in an event in their life where they needed some extra money. They were working a lot of hours. We were paying lots of overtime. They were really helping the company, and they just needed some extra money. And they did what's kind of referred to as floated money, where they borrowed money from their own cash reserves, and that they needed to keep strict tabs on, and they're responsible for. And I found it, and they just said, yeah, I ended up taking the money. I was going to pay it back eventually, and kind of explain the hard time they were going on. And it was one of my first really challenging situations, I think, as a young leader in a retail environment, because I really liked the employee, and I understood the challenging situation they were in. But at the end of the day, even when good people make bad decisions, you cannot look the other way, because while maybe that situation I found out about, I don't know how many other situations it was in, I cannot promote an environment where something like that is acceptable, but only on this situation and not that situation. It's never acceptable. And we made the decision that unfortunately we had to part with that. We had to sever the employment with that employee. This is a great employee. I really liked them, but you have to hold tight to what you know is right and what your company knows is right, no matter what the situation is, or as a business you will eventually fail.
Thank you for sharing that example. What for some people it could be a very difficult decision to make. When you're put in a position of authority like that, especially if it's someone you hired that you may even personally know. And in sharing that, we talked off camera about your ethical framework, and you just mentioned this ideal of, their decisions are not aligned with the company's values or even your own values. So my question for you is, where does your ethical framework derive from? Does it derive from the organization? Does it derive from your own personal experiences? Is it a combination of both? Tell me more about where your framework comes from.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think at the end of the day, everybody's ethical framework, it's built over time, and really the person's entire life and the life experiences they've been in. I've always been a very hard worker, getting paid under the counter before I could legally work in Iowa to help make money, and kind of always had this idea of just work hard and work hard and work hard and do what's right, and good things will happen. And then you have my military experiences where the first time you really get immersed in different environments from everywhere. And as I move up and I meet new people from all over, and all those situations kind of build my personal ethical framework that provide that foundation of ethics that I think is just ingrained in somebody, that is not possible to ever change, but maybe can mold as they come across new situations. And then when you have your company is always going to have an ethical standard that they have, and that will then provide the framework for your decision making between what you believe is right, but does it fall under what the company's requirements and standards are. And I think a lot of people who have long-term success with a company, those two ethical standards typically will merge and be very similar, which is why people stay at companies for a long time, because they can relate to what's important. And it's hard to imagine something more important than an individual's ethics. So when those do align, I think you have those long-term relationships with an individual and their company. So in short, I think my entire life experiences combined with what my company's framework provide the foundation for all of my ethical decision makings at work.
So for everyone, our ethics come from our experiences, they come from culture, they come from even our profession. And then, we have our families where our ethics come from. I think that there's no one that would disagree with that. One of the things that was also prevalent in your answer was how we bring all those different experiences we have and which cultivate our ethics, and how that ties into the relationship we build within the organization. I like to think that working in an organization is very much like a relationship. It's like a dating relationship. Am I a good fit for the company? And the company asking, is this an employee a good fit for organization? And there's a bit of a honeymoon stage that takes place. And we look at that honeymoon stage, we like to call it the probationary period, right? Yeah. Is this person really someone that I want to continue the relationship with within the organization? One of the things that I think about as far as, I like to call them key tenets, when it comes to the values that are introduced as you're building this relationship, is trust. You know, can I trust this employee? But also the employee asking, can I trust this organization? I want you to share with me, like, how do you build trust? How does that play a role in your ethical decision making? But also, how do you build trust with your employees as a manager?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and trust is important. It's I think there's really three key pillars or three key questions that develop any leader, and trust is one of them. And I think when you always truly try to do what is right for your employees, I think that trust will just naturally be built. For example, when I say I'm trying to do what's right for my employees, it's not necessarily what's right for just this employee or that employee, but my employees as a whole, my teams. I may have an employee who, again, another employee who I really like, and maybe they're trying really, really hard to be successful, but they're just not being successful. Those situations are some of the hardest parts of being a leader in any organization, because you really get attracted to employees who try so hard to be successful, because you see a little bit of yourself in them, I think, or at least I see a little bit of myself in them, and just working so hard to be as successful as possible. But when they're not successful and they realize maybe this just isn't the right job for them, where this person can be successful, but not here. You have to say, okay, well, it's going to be a challenging decision for this employee, but by allowing them to be in a situation they're not being successful in, you're not just hurting your organization, or you're not just hurting this employee, you're hurting everybody around them, because naturally people around them have to work harder to make up for them. And when you tell yourself what is truly right, and you think about the employee as a whole and the company as a whole and your other employees as a whole, normally when you make that decision for that one employee, it's right for everybody, because you may have to decide this job is not right for them, and you have to end that employment with them, which is a challenging situation. And for that employee at the time, it may feel like the end of the world for them, because they worked so hard. And maybe everybody else really liked them as well, and you really like them. But what happens is you see down the road that employee who is so hardworking and wants to be successful so much, they go into the right job for them, and they become very successful, far more successful than they ever could have been working at your position. Not because the company did anything wrong or because that employee did anything wrong, but because they just were not right for each other. So then they become more successful. And then everybody in the organization who was working hard now comes up as a team, because they're not making up for somebody who was not able to hold up their end. So your team morale goes up, and everything goes up. And then the company becomes more successful because you're able to bring somebody in who is right for the position, and they go around. And I think when everybody around you sees that you're truly trying to do what's right for everybody, even if you have to make the hard decision, but you're willing to do that, that naturally builds the trust. And they see that maybe it was a hard decision, you weren't sure about it, but when everybody is successful at all levels, and they know you truly care about all employees, that trust comes.
It's that whole ideal of caring is about being dependent, and not just being dependent, but asking yourself, do I trust my manager? Do I trust my subordinates? Do I trust my fellow colleagues? Extremely important to have trust amongst your employees, amongst your organization, because when we build trust, we then build a sense of camaraderie and cooperation amongst one another. And that cooperation is where we go into that key phrase you mentioned, which is that social responsibility. And we ask ourselves then, what is my social responsibility to the organization? We realize that in answering that question, that everyone has a social responsibility to each other.
I'm not in it for me, and my employee's not in it just for them. But when I'm doing what's right for you because I need to do something on my side and you're doing what's right for me, we are all benefiting by the decisions we are making, and we have to benefit together. If I have something that needs to get done, but it does not benefit my employees are really not going to do it to the best of their ability, and therefore it's not going to get completed as good as something could. Same thing with the customer, same thing with outside vendors. Everybody has to be there because it benefits themselves. It's not this negotiation of I need to be the one who wins this side, or they need to be the one that wins this side. It's how can we all do what's best for all of us, and then we all succeed together. Whether it's in a decision on something that's so minuscule that it's, hey, let's change when we're gonna have an employee go on break, or something large that's, hey, this is gonna be a multi-million-dollar decision. I need to make sure everybody's on board with this. At the end of the day, when everybody benefits from decisions and we all succeed together, that's really what I think social responsibility is all the stakeholders, everybody around us, the community, the customers, the employees, and the business together are all succeeding, and we're all doing what's right for everybody.
Supermarket and grocery industry makes up the largest food retail channel in the United States. It is an industry that must play an infinite game to prevent a disruption in supplying the needs of society. To ensure this, professionals practice ethics that consider the value of the decision made, with a focus on doing what is right for the welfare of the company and all employees.